He's committed to the stuff down there.
Who's going to count this off?
It's fixing to happen. I'd like to welcome everybody to Committee Day, Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission. I'm Chairman Kurt Holbert. We've got a heavy agenda today. I know several of you are maybe here to speak on certain items. There'll be a time at the end of that committee meeting or discussion that be asked for public comment. I'd ask that all public comment be kept to 3 minutes and that it be relative to whatever subject we're talking about at that time. Danette, would you call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Connie King,
Here.
Jim Ripley,
Here.
Tony Sanders,
Here.
James Stroud, Kent Woods, Tommy Woods,
Here.
Hank Wright, Angie Box, Brian McLaren,
Here.
Kurt Holbert.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Danette. Is there any announcements from any commissioner? Director Carter? You're quiet. At this time, I'm going to call on our Tennessee Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Charlie Hatcher, who's asked to say a few words before we get started this morning.
Can I stand up here so I can see everybody down there? I just wanted to drop by and get a CWD update and also express my sincere appreciation for the commission and the agency on their unprecedented support in this CWD war, and also their commitment to fighting it, and also the support for the incinerator. I do think, at least on the captive side, it's a matter of time before we get it into captive deer. And so we're all in this together, and I'm glad we've worked on this together for a long time back during the state veterinarian days. And in fact, we did that tabletop, I don't know how long ago, right before it was diagnosed, so it might have been a foreshadowing. We also did the High Path AI tabletop right before we had that, so I don't know if we're going to quit doing tabletops, I guess. But really, my sincere appreciation for that, because it's here to stay. It's a problem for all of us, and I'm glad that we're working on it together.
Thank you, Dr. Hatcher. You know, every time I look at you, and I have to think about my daughter and how I can't pick the person she marries. So I just want you to know, and you understand what I'm saying. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So.
I know what you're talking.
Anyway, so some people figure that out after the meeting. So. That's right. It's okay, Chuck. We won't tell anyone you're his son-in-law. So without any further discussion, I'm going to turn it over to our chairman of the Wildlife Committee, Commissioner Dennis Gardner.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to recognize Chuck Yoest, son-in-law.
Director Carter, I'm sorry. And with that, I would like to present an update on chronic wasting disease. And thank you for this opportunity. And I'll just get right into it. So we've had quite a bit developed since the last commission meeting, and we now, you see a picture before you of the CWD affected area. Some changes are the positive classification or reclassification of Chester County and the high risk of Lauderdale County. So I may have missed some others there, but the point is we now have 7 positive CWD counties and 4 high-risk counties. And, you know, a lot of this we learned about over the holidays because we got a lot of results from the hunter-harvested deer back. And, you know, it was quite an eventful time, and at times it may have seemed like, my goodness, what in the world is going on? Things seem to be getting drastically worse, and I can understand why we would feel that way. However, this is almost exactly how we thought we would end up at the end of the year, unfortunately, or at the end of deer season, because early indications from what we learned last year, once we detected it and we intensified our monitoring efforts, this is kind of new, kind of where we thought we would be. Dr. Dan Grove, this is almost exactly what he had predicted where we would be. So the only thing that I'll say is that there is one thing there that we've got about 1,200, or let me back up and say that we've still got 70 tests pending from McNairy County. And I would not be surprised. Hopefully it won't happen, but there is a chance that McNairy County could become positive. I think that based on the locations from Hardeman and Chester, I think there's a real likelihood that McNairy County is positive. We just probably haven't found the right sample from that county. So just be aware, that's another change that could occur in the next couple of days as we get the final results in from the deer season. So this is the distribution of the positive results that we have been able to document the locations for. The yellow dots being the counties or the positives from last deer season, and the red dots being the ones from this deer season. We've still got, I'll share some more firm numbers in just a moment, but we've still got a fair amount of samples outstanding. And not only that, some of the positive results that we got back, we don't have locations for those yet. One of the things that we have not been able to catch up on as of yet is following up with all the positive hunters and getting all those locations. And that's what you see here. So we've got 100 or so more to still get, and so this map will change as a result of that. Well, let me back up one more time and remind folks that that is a 10-mile buffer, the purple circles that you see there, and that represents what causes a high-risk county to be high-risk is we have not found the disease there. However, we have found it within 10 miles. So counties like Lauderdale County, you'll just see the southwest portion of that county was within 10 miles of the Tipton County positive. Therefore, Lauderdale became high risk. So just a reminder of what that is, and also a reminder that those, like you look at Haywood and Madison County, those most northern red dots there, we refer to those as sparks. And what we mean is that CWD has been found there only, except it seems to be at a very low prevalence, and there's an opportunity there to focus on that area, have additional harvest there, and hopefully keep CWD from establishing there. Okay, so keep that in mind as we move forward. And these are some harvest results of this deer season that just ended in comparison to the previous deer season. Now, I wish I could show you a comparison of this last deer season to the previous 3 or 5 year average. We haven't been able to do that level of analysis yet. We'll have that information for you in April and May as we go through the season setting process. The folks that do this type of analysis have also been responsible for our disease reporting work, so they've been buried with that, so the analysis hasn't occurred yet, but we'll get to that. The area that you see on the map outlined in green in southwest Tennessee is unit CWD. Those counties, we had an 18% overall decrease in the harvest, a 7% decrease in bucks, and 30% decrease in does. Comparably, I also included the statewide information up there, so you'll see that there was a 9% increase overall there as well, and also a decrease in both bucks and does. So statewide, we had a decrease. Excuse me, I should clarify. That is the rest of the state, not the entire state. That's the state minus CWD, or the state minus unit CWD. So you got a comparison there of what happened outside of unit CWD and what happened inside unit CWD. Overall, there was a decline, but an even greater decline in unit CWD, which is very concerning, unfortunately, because we needed the harvest there to go up if it could, and unfortunately it did not. And pardon this being a bit of a negative presentation, but it's the facts, and that's what I'm here to share with you and update you on. But the core counties, Fayette and Hardeman County, where the situation seems to be the worst, prevalence rates are the highest. We even saw an increase, statistically significant increase in prevalence over last year in these counties. And there, unfortunately, we had a 24% decrease overall, 10% decrease in bucks, and 37% increase in does compared to last year. Now, I want to give you an example here to help you see even more just how urgent of a circumstance we have and how challenging of a chronic wasting disease issue we have. If you think about let's focus on does just a minute, and let's assume that, well, we know that there was less does harvested, 37% less. So if you do some quick math, what that means is that hypothetically there are 150 does from those 2 counties that were positive who are going to go and have fawns this spring. They'll average a fawn and a half, which equals 224 deer, because more than likely the doe is going to pass CWD to her fawns. That increases the number of positive deer, additional positive deer on the landscape to 224. Then if you do a little math, a little crude math, and you look at, that means that there'd be about 43 positive bucks that also survived that didn't the previous year. So getting to the point, there would be about 267 positive deer in those 2 counties that will be on the landscape because the harvest decreased there. And that's the alarming thing about CWD. Once it gets to a certain prevalence, that prevalence rate begins to grow exponentially, and we're on the verge of that in these 2 counties. And it is very comparable to the situation that they currently have in Wisconsin in some areas. And we're already where they were in 2009. So it's a severe issue that we have in those 2 counties. So I discussed this with Dan Grove recently, and he wanted to pass on these words of wisdom. Dan was unfortunately not able to be here because of another commitment, so I just provided a quote today, and it's: "The silver bullet for CWD is in fact a bullet. Hunters, landowners, and TWRA have to increase the harvest to control CWD. Increasing harvest will result in more infected deer being killed and help prevent the remaining positive deer from interacting with the non-infected ones." And you know, CWD seems like a big, daunting, complex thing, but on the other hand, it's very simple, and that's what Dan wanted, or Dr. Grove wanted to remind us by sharing this today. So, knowing that, we've had a super intensive effort for CWD testing. Each commission, I've provided you an update on those results. Our staff have done an amazing job with what they've accomplished this past deer season, and I'm just amazed that these are the final numbers. I'll draw your attention to the bottom of the table, and we had over 14,000 deer sampled this fall, and out of those we had 462 positives, and you'll see we've still got about 800 or so pending, but we'll know the results of those in the next few days. So very quickly we'll be able to report the final results from deer season. So looking at the past 2 deer seasons, this is where we currently stand. The 18-19 season, we had 186 positives, and this past deer season, 462, so a cumulative total of 648. These are the prevalence estimates, and I highlighted Fayette and Hardeman counties there because obviously they're the worst, and I've been emphasizing the circumstances there up until now. And again, that's a statistically significant increase from this past year. And you know, the thing is though, CWD is a slow acting disease. It's a slow moving disease, but once it gets to a certain prevalence, it can climb. And that's what we have in those counties. Now, for the remainder of the state, you know, we have a surveillance strategy that has points assigned to each county. That's a goal of ours, to make sure that we do an appropriate amount of sampling in an efficient and strategic way. We've accomplished that for all but 8 counties in the state, and I anticipate that we'll get the remaining counties done in the next few weeks. We can work with processors and taxidermists, and we may take some extra measures to try to get those samples met. But generally speaking, it's counties that are at the far reaches. For example, Lake County on the Mississippi border, or Mississippi River County, and then counties like Johnson and Carter that are the farthest east counties. So lower deer densities, less opportunities to get our hands on deer there, but we'll get that accomplished, and we're in great shape because we only have 8 counties left. Now moving on to disposal, a quick update there. The Wolf River Carcass Management Site is now closed. That got us through deer season, and really happy with how that went. So that's closed. The Chickasaw State Forest site is now available. We're not utilizing that site, and but it is there in case. And thanks to the Department of Agriculture for helping with that. and then also TDEC and the Department of Agriculture for help on guiding us and partnering with us on the management of the carcass management sites. So every now and then you get some benefits out of the Department of Agriculture and the commissioner. So. No, it's, genuinely, that was a great effort, and I appreciate your support. So the incinerator trial. So there's been developments with the incinerator too. I know there was a lot of interest in that, and quickly I'll provide an update on that. This is the mobile unit or the portable unit that we have purchased. We don't anticipate that we will have it be portable. We anticipate it staying exactly where it is, but we have done a trial with that now, and you'll see the containers there they contain deer parts, specifically heads, that we put in the incinerator. You see that there. And real quick, I'll show you a video here to give you an idea of the operation of that. Real captivating video, so hang on to your seats. So what we learned, and thanks Joe for that video, and so this information is from one burn. So for this unit, it's a 1,000-pound capacity. It held about 120 heads or 1,000 pounds. Took 10 hours to burn, 25 gallons of ash that remained, and then about $120 in fuel. So you see the details of that. And maybe I didn't point out that what you see in that picture is you're looking down into the unit after we've done a burn, and that's the remains. You've got basically ash and bone fragments there. We did invite Commissioner Holbert to come by, and he helped us throughout this process. And while he was there, he wanted me to be sure and take a picture and share it today. Yes, sir. This particular unit, 1,400 degrees. You got to get higher. You got to get higher. The grant that you guys passed for Fayette County was the purchase of a large-scale unit that'll get over 1,800 degrees. That's what you need. So this really was an experiment to learn what we could learn and see could we scale these smaller units just to reduce the volume of deer, and then package them this way, which is double bagged and contained in a container, and then taken to the large incinerator to be finally processed. So moving on, some other things of significance. Over the holidays, the diagnostics lab at Colorado State that we were utilizing got really overwhelmed with all the samples from all the different states. So in a pinch, we decided to see if we could partner quickly with another lab, and was successful in doing that. And that was with the Mississippi Diagnostics Lab. And I wanted to thank, there was a group of staff over the holidays that were super important and dedicated in making sure that our results reporting continued over the holidays, and then we actually pulled this off as well of making arrangements with that other lab and keeping things moving. So that was a huge benefit over the holidays and involved a lot of different work units within TWRA and individuals. So thanks everybody, staff, for that support, because that was a huge deal that we were really facing some challenges there, and that helped us. A legislative update was provided last week to the House Ag and Natural Resources Committee, or Subcommittee, and thanks, Chris, for organizing that and helping lead that. That was a really good interaction with them. I felt like they appreciated an update and are bought into the agency's management of CWD. And then lastly, just recently, or following that legislative report, there was one of the leaders of Farm Bureau that came up to me and told me that they were interested in partnering with us on CWD. So I've got an idea of working with them. That's one of our key stakeholders that I haven't figured out how to plug in to help us with this issue, but I appreciated that offer and will definitely take them up on that. What's next as far as CWD management, where we're focused now, is we got to fully evaluate the results of this deer season. Then we'll come to you guys in April and May to suggest changes for the deer season. We've also got to develop new ways to incentivize harvest, and I mean beyond the regulations that you guys pass. So what I mean is we may develop a program where, you know, there's certain trinkets or different things or awards that are given to hunters that harvest additional deer and meet certain benchmarks that would be helpful for us to increase the harvest there, kind of like the bear program currently has with the nice hats that they give out for getting bear teeth and such. We're about to conduct another series of public meetings across West Tennessee to provide updates, and then to go into the new counties that are affected and bring them up to speed on what CWD is and what it means for Tennessee hunters. Also doing some diagnostics planning. Next fall, we hope to have the Department of Ag operational to do diagnostics. And I learned this year that you need to have at least 2 labs that you can send tests to at any time. So we'll be either continuing at some level a partnership with Colorado State, and then probably, or maybe with Mississippi Lab, since that worked out so well. We're going to continue addressing disposal issues, and Chris may follow me up by providing more information on that in regards to the large-scale incinerator. These 2 things are kind of what I'll leave you with today. These are things that we have not done yet that are warranted, but they are a big undertaking by the Wildlife Agency. And we're at a crossroads where we've done remarkably well. We've got a really difficult situation, but we've risen to the occasion. We've done great monitoring this year. We have a great idea of where we are. But now it's time to decide what else we can do. And 2 things that we can do is develop a landowner prescription program. This will be really important down in the core area. And I've got the map up there to show you where that cluster of red dots are. Is we need landowners there harvesting more deer, and there are opportunities to do that. So we need to work with those landowners to find out how many deer per square mile they have, what the prevalence is, and set targets for them to bring both of those numbers down. And we need to do that in that core area. Outside of that, those sparks that you see there, again, Haywood, Madison, Tipton counties, Chester counties, is targeted removal. We could go in partnership with landowners, either us or somebody we contract with, to have additional harvest there to hopefully snuff out CWD and keep those sparks from igniting and causing bigger fires or bigger areas of disease. So with that, that's all I have as far as an update. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to entertain those.
Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate the briefing, and certainly appreciate all the hard work that's put in on this, and scrambling to get the other diagnostic lab was huge. And I know we went through a period where the testing time was getting extremely, or what people would consider extremely long, especially if you're having to store deer before you process them. It's cumbersome. But thank you very much. Any questions from the commission? Just full commission. I do have one. Did y'all think any about sending the ashes off out of that small incinerator burn to see if what they tested, or is there a way to test those ashes?
I have not. I'll check on that though. That's something I hadn't thought of that we can look into.
I was just curious what 1400 degrees did to them, and what if it still showed up. It just amazes me anything can live through that. Mm-hmm. So. Not that I don't doubt it, I just would have been curious enough to send it off. But if no other questions, then I recognize Chris Richardson. Oh, never mind, Brian, go ahead.
Of the 120 heads that you were incinerating in that test, what percentage of those were positive, or were they just random selected heads that you tested, or what was the breakup of that?
those heads were ones that the sampling station, in other words, known as the freezers, that hunters could put heads in, and then we would sample their deer. That's where those heads came from, and it's hard to say how many of them were positive, how many were not. However, I think just an approximate amount would, if it was 120, 10% of that would be 12. Is that right? Yeah, 10% of 120, whatever that figure is. Yeah.
I think I've asked before, but I didn't, it wasn't an answer that I would, the ashes that do not reach the 1800 hill, isn't there a chemical that those ashes could be treated with? Then,
Well, what I understand, the options for disposing of those are to be ensured that to denature the prions is to take them to an incinerator that's over 1800 degrees or chemical digestion. I don't know what all chemicals are involved there, but
add the chemical to the ashes and build.
maybe
I think that's the same answer last time.
well, that's it's just a matter. It's an option, but it's not nearly, wouldn't be nearly as efficient and easy to contain as just taking them to a larger incinerator or a chemical digester. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm going to give you kind of an update on where we are with Fayette County Incinerator. A lot of work has happened since you all so graciously approved the budget expansion to let us start that work. I've been in contact with Fayette County Mayor on multiple occasions. We're working through some of those details. Dr. Grove has taken the lead on working with an incinerator company to spec out the specific model that will probably work best for us, and we have that information back. What we're looking at is a model that will burn approximately 500 pounds per hour, excuse me, and be able to operate 8 hours per day. The neat thing about this incinerator that is different than others we've looked at is the cool down period is not near as long. So we're told that this can burn 8 separate 500-pound burns, be shut down at the end of the day, and by the next morning be cleaned out and ready to go again. It also has an automatic dump feature. We buy some, I guess, dumpster type containers that are kept on site. The deer can be deposited in that. The machine will then lift and dump the carcass parts into the incinerator. There's also a vacuum system that aids in clean out as far as removing the ash. So it should be a much, as far as the incinerators I've personally seen, and in comparison to the one up here at Cord Lab, it should be much easier to run for the Fayette County employees that work at the Class 3 landfill there. There's still some discussions going on within the General Assembly about any recurring costs. We're told that the incinerator will cost, fuel-wise, about $30 per hour to operate. So some other folks within the governor's administration and people that know more about developing business plans than I do are going to work with Fayette County to help try to figure out how we can operate, or how they can operate this incinerator in the black. I will say we're going to have to discuss in soon, there will be some fee associated with disposal for processors. That is not, we're not going to be able to provide this service for free, but that's not contrary to what the situation was before when they were paying, to take them to a landfill. So the ballpark quote that we got on the incinerator was around $500,000. That includes some level of installation, but not all of it. There still is a significant amount of site prep that will have to be done. I think the unit weighs 35 tons. So the concrete and things that have to be put in at the Fayette County site will have to be substantial. So I think where we are now on that is Dwight is maybe looking to do a little bit of engineering plans on what it will take to get that site ready. And then our intention will be to go to Fayette County and sit down and talk through all of this. So we still have a target date and still on track for now of being fully operational by next deer season. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Senator Dolores Gresham, Representative Ron Gant, Mayor Skip Taylor in Fayette County. There's been a number of people that have been involved in this, Commissioner David Salyers and the folks at TDEC. Without all of those people working on this, we wouldn't be as far down the track as we are, and certainly your support with the $1 million of sportsmen's money to contribute to this. It's been a great cooperative plan to this point, and I think we can carry it over the finish line. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thanks, Chris. Appreciate the update on that. Is that, I just have one question. Is that, so you could go 7 days a week on that?
You could.
No full rest day at all?
Correct.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Any other questions for Chris? Go ahead, Commissioner Ripley.
Chris, there was concern when we were addressing this at, I guess, the last meeting that there not be costs to other counties. Has that been addressed in an agreement with?
It's still something we've got to discuss with the mayor. What we have consistently said throughout this whole process is that Fayette County, this incinerator is going to have to take carcasses from other places. It's not going to be limited to Fayette County deer. So I don't know that there will be any charges to other counties, but other processors, it will be an available site to them, is our intention.
You know, obviously, our concern, I think, was that as a state agency, we don't want to be seen as picking one county over another or favoring it with our contribution.
Sure.
And so that is a concern.
And I think Commissioner Ripley, to that end, the state of Tennessee will maintain ownership in this incinerator. We are not gifting it to them. We have a partnership with them where they were the only county that came and said, we've got a site and we've got people that can help you run it, and we're right in the heart of the CWD zone. So from all of those perspectives, there was definitely not a lot of other options, and certainly none that were as attractive as a willing county partner that was going to take that much of an active role.
Commissioner Granberry.
I guess I'm over here, jumping on you. Chris, long-term, if it doesn't cost $1 million, including site prep, will the excess money go into a maintenance reserve for future repairs?
It's certainly something we'll consider. We may also look at, some of the costs that I'm not factoring in there would include multiple of these dumpsters or totes. One thing that I've asked the Wildlife Division to kind of look at is, would it be possible to buy enough of these totes to place them at processors to make transfer easier, hauling easier, investigate? Because that's still kind of the unknown piece that we don't have a hard plan for, is how are the processors throughout the CWD zone and the people and the taxidermists and others that need disposal, how are they going to get these items to Fayette County? That's something we're still working on. So if there is money left over, I think certainly thinking about a maintenance fund or looking at other ways to combat the disposal issue. And quite honestly, we may come back to you and say, we spent $900,000 of it. We got everything we want on this incinerator. What do you want to do with the other 100?
Anybody else? Any other questions? Well, thanks, Chris. Appreciate the update on that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I'd like to recognize Joe Benedict.
Good afternoon, folks. I don't think I've ever given a presentation after a CWD presentation by Chuck Yoest, so this is going to be a first for me. Yeah, apparently. I've got an empty chair, so I feel safe. So I guess while they're getting my presentation up, I guess I want to take just a personal moment to share my thanks for the CWD response that agencies has done over the last year. We're at the end of deer season. There's a lot of work to do, as Chuck mentioned. And, sometimes folks think about CWD as wildlife. It's in the Wildlife Committee today. That's where we are right now in the agenda. But really, it's an agency response. And it's clear from the slides that we have and the communications that you guys see that the communication division, our legal division, and our law enforcement division, and really every piece of the agency is involved in the response. So I just wanted to share my thanks as the chief to all of our agency staff that have helped in this response, and in particular, I just want to give a shout out to our law enforcement officers who are really the face of the agency in every community across the state. You know, they're in a green truck, they're at a gas station, people know who they are when they're in the grocery store, and those folks, those men and women, get questions all the time about CWD, and we couldn't really do it without them. And I know that the commission has a fond place in their heart for our law enforcement officers, and I just wanted to share with all the officers out there my thanks as well. So thank you for that ability to take that privilege there. So the reason I'm here today is to preview the migratory Gamebird seasons and regulations for next year, 2020, 2021. Hard to say that. This is Proclamation 20-01. And again, this is a preview, so there'll be no decisions made today. So I want to share a little bit with you today about the public input process that we use for migratory birds. We'll talk about a few changes to the early migratory bird seasons, doves, crows, woodcock, those kind of things. Talk about doves and geese and cranes, and then finally wrap up with hunting with raptors. I guess I'll just start by saying that most of these changes are simply calendar updates to reflect the calendar for next fall. So there's just a few changes. There's a lot of dates that we'll show, just kind of for the record. But again, the framework of the seasons haven't really changed except what I'll share specifically. So we asked for and invite public comment for the month of October through November. We put out news releases, social media requests, telling folks that we're looking for their input. We also take the input we receive throughout the year and hold that until this time. And then, of course, we consult with our staff within the division and law enforcement as well as we make our decisions. So the early season migratory game bird, you see a list there: dove, woodcock, snipe, crow. There's no changes in the federal frameworks for these species. So all the dates that I'm going to show you are calendar date changes only. You see that I've underlined crow, and I know that many of you have talked to stakeholders, received emails, talked to myself and my staff about crows. We are changing the structure of the crow season. So while everything has calendar date updates for this year, or next year rather, crows actually we change the structure of that season. So the current crow season is 2 phases. We're allowed 124 days by the federal government to hunt crows. The current season is June 1st through August 18th on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then October 5th through January 1st, 7 days a week, so no date restrictions. And so we received input, as many of you have, that folks wanted more crow hunting days in the cooler months, January and February, specifically after waterfowl season closed. So that was kind of the bulk of the input we received about crows. So the recommended crow season, again, this is a preview for your information. We're recommending Friday, Saturday, and Sunday crow season in phase 1, the months of from June to July, June 12th to July 12th. A second phase in the cooler months, which is again what folks recommend or request of us, September 4th to December 20th, again 3 days of hunting per week. And then finally, all of January and February with no day restrictions. So that's the proposal that we have for crow season. Again, it really meets the most of the comments that we receive from the public. And I think it'll be a welcome structure of that season to many of them. So here's where we get into slides with numbers. You know, these are the opening, closing dates for woodcock, snipe, and crow. You'll note that these crow seasons are the ones that we just discussed. The other season dates are the same as previous years, just updated for the calendar. And I'll just go through these and just pause on each slide so folks can take it in. So this is the wood duck teal season, rails, and gallinules. Again, no change, just an update for the calendar. No change to the daily bag limits. Dove season, again, no change to the structure of the season. 3 phases there. There is 2 changes in the waterfowl and coot regulations. This is basically ducks and geese. The change will be a reduction in the Scaup daily bag limit from 3 per day down to this, what we call a hybrid season, which is 2 per day for 45 days and 1 per day for 15 days. So there's a harvest strategy at the flyway level, at the national level, that sets out these different packages. So when Scaup numbers go down a little bit, we're allowed to have 2 per day for part of the season and 1 per day. So it's just a way to maximize the number of Scaup that we could shoot in a given season. So we recommend following this, this reduction. Obviously, we have to because of the feds, the federal regulations. And again, the duck season, both in the reelfoot zone and the remainder of the states, no changes here to the structure or the timing of the season, just update for calendar dates. And there is that one change in the Scaup daily bag limit. There's a new opportunity that we're able to add for next year. It's a Veterans and Active Military Personnel Waterfowl Hunting Days. So I want to thank all of our military folks that serve or have served. Thank you for your service to us, and we're able to recognize them to provide two extra additional days of hunting. So I'll skip to this slide. So you'll see the youth waterfowl seasons there. Again, calendar updates only. We've had the youth hunts the 2 Saturdays following the end of the regular duck season. That's the historic time of that. We're recommending adding the veteran and active military days the Sundays after those days. So you see the calendar date. The first youth hunt would be February 6th on the Saturday. The following day, Sunday, February 7th, would be the veterans and active military hunt. And the same thing for the second weekend, February 13th and 14th. So this will be a new opportunity, 2 more days of duck for those folks. White-fronted goose seasons, again, no changes to the framework, just calendar date updates. I'll pause here for a moment. Canada goose and Brant seasons, again, no change, just calendar dates. Light goose seasons, reelfoot in the remainder of the state, again, no change, just calendar updates. The light goose conservation season, which follows the goose season. Season opens February 15th, closes March 22nd. Again, no change there. Moving on to Sandhill cranes. Again, just an update to the calendar dates. I will draw your attention to the bottom right corner. A lot of folks are interested in the number of tags that we'll be issuing next year. The total number of tags is 2,701, and you can see the breakdown between the Sandhill crane zone and the statewide zone at the bottom. I will comment, this year, because of the warm weather, when we did our crane counts, those numbers in the state are down. And so the number of tags that we get, we're allocated, is based on a rolling average of 3 or 5 years. And so this low year population estimate of cranes in Tennessee will affect those numbers moving forward. It won't affect this number, but in the future years it will. So that number might go down a little bit based on this warm winter that we've had. And so raptor hunting for migratory game birds, this is folks that have raptors, obviously. These are, again, no change to the structure, just calendar date corrections. That's the first group there. There's a second group here. So in summary, the changes that we're recommending reflect both federal framework changes with Scaup and military days and also stakeholder input. We've recommended modifications to the crow season based on the stakeholder input, and then allowing these additional days for active military and reduced bag limit for Scaup. So that's a preview. We'll come back next month with the final recommendation. That concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer questions.
All right, thank you, Joe. We appreciate that. Are there questions concerning the migratory game bird season? Commissioner McLaren.
Could we go back and look at the crow again, please?
This recommendation?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sure. I forgot to mention, Commissioner McLaren, I believe these dates, June 12th is a Saturday. I believe the 4th of September is a Saturday. I think we're going to look at if we receive no more additional comment in the next month before the next commission meeting, we would probably look to standardize these dates, beginning the Saturday. I think that's probably the second Saturday in June. It would just let folks know ahead of time without actually seeing the calendar date, to create some consistency. So I believe these are opening on a Saturday for a certain number of days, probably ending on a Sunday. So we would probably make that structure change.
Okay. And so this maximizes our days that were allotted.
Yes. This would be
And,
the full allowable number of days, 124.
Is the end of February the cutoff that we have to be done by, or is that just,
So the federal frameworks are a little bit loose in that. What they say is that your states are not allowed to select hunting dates that occurred during the nestling season. And so we've asked our state ornithologist, David Haney, what that would be in Tennessee, and he says March 1st until the end of May. So we would avoid those days because there'd be nestlings out there.
Okay.
So in essence, for Tennessee, yes, that's the end of the framework.
okay, I feel like this answers most of the comments that I have had. Most people are wanting to be able to hunt in January and February that I've received. Thank you.
Chairman Holbert?
Joe, just a questions aloud. If just a scenario, if we did take those summer days away and put it at the 1st of December, is there enough days there to get to the 1st of December and leave it from December 1st to February 28th?
If we did kind of a late and straight, you mean? Or
Is Jamie in here? Is there enough? How many days do you have in?
well, it would be 30 days between June and July, right? Or 31.
Yeah, but I'm only hunting weekends,
Right.
so I don't know how many.
Yeah, so
And you
if,
said that was on a Friday. I don't know. Mine says Saturday. I don't know.
yeah, so it is Friday. We had it set up so that it would be Friday because you hunt Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But if you were to take all those days in June and all those days in September and December, and you were to just go late and straight, I believe the season would open at like November 19th or something like that and run straight through to the end of February. So if you were just running 7 days a week,
Okay, but
Yeah.
could you do away with the summer and just leave the phase 2 like it is, opening on September 4th through December 1st, and then have it solid from December 1st to February 20th? That's what I'm asking. Is there enough days to do that?
we could take a look at that for sure. I just would like to note, though, one of the reasons that we do keep those summer days in there is this was a sort of a staff discussion that we had at one point was in certain areas of the state where there is corn growing, the farmers like to have the crow season so they can invite folks onto their property, keep crows off of their corn. So just to so you know why we have those days in the summer months.
Okay.
Any other questions? Commissioner Wright?
George, I just have one question about the youth hunt and the veteran and military. I've had some people ask about the youth hunt rather than having one Saturday and then the next Saturday. It'd be a lot easier if it was just a Saturday and Sunday so they could plan one weekend and clean up their camp. Just for thought and for discussion, maybe we consider, one weekend of youth and then one weekend of, because they're different people and types and different camps and different cleanup times. It might just be easier on everybody.
That's a great thought, and actually our staff had the same thought. We actually have a duck hunter survey out right now that asks that very question of youth hunters. We didn't ask about veterans hunters because at the time that we started the survey, we weren't aware of that. But we did ask youth hunters, or we asked about youth hunting if folks preferred back-to-back days or separate weekends. And I believe we have preliminary results. We don't have them all, but I believe that they liked the way it was. So we'll revisit that next month, and we may have a little stronger. We won't have the final results of that survey yet, but that's a great point.
You said the way it was, you asking the way it used to be or back to back? Or different weekends? Used to be Saturday and Sunday, then it went to,
Right.
which one, preliminary, does it look like?
Preliminary is they like it the way it is now, I believe. But Jamie is up here.
Oh, I'm just going to leave and say, additionally, if you have bad weather one weekend, the kids don't lose out an entire hunt.
So the other point Jamie mentioned is that if you have bad weather one weekend and folks can't travel to hunt, you've got another weekend for the youth to do it. So, great question. We'll give you an update next month.
Yeah, and I brought that up last year, as a matter of fact, a lot of people travel to hunt, and bad weather's not necessarily a bad thing for a duck hunt anyway, even with youth. But one of the main reasons I think people prefer the Saturdays is because of the way some of the WMAs are set up where you can't hunt Sundays on them. And if we were to consider going to a Saturday, Sunday, I think those WMAs, we need to also consider that those WMAs should be open for youth. Years ago, I grew up in Millington and took a bunch of kids down in Shelby Forest, and we hunted Saturday, and we had a great hunt. Problem is, we couldn't go back there and do it again Sunday, so we ended up going somewhere else. You know, we still had a great day in the woods, but it wasn't as successful as we could have been because we were on the birds the day before, but the WMA was not open. So if we do consider that, and then it goes for the veterans and military as well, I think we need to consider having those WMAs open for those youth hunts and the veteran hunt.
Good point, thank you.
Any other questions? Anybody? I've got one other comment. The crow season kind of baffles me from a federal standpoint, I guess. I understand the nesting requirements, but to limit us to the 124 days, but then to say you can kill all you want just seems strange to me. You know, put no limits on them. I don't know. I'm sure y'all find it strange too. I just thought I'd say that. But thank you for the presentation. Any comments from the public? Hold on. All right, any other public comments about anything to do with hunting WMAs or otherwise? Yes, sir. Just state your name, come up to the microphone if you don't mind, and any associations you represent.
Patrick Craig, and concerned with the MTSU Wildlife Management. The landowners gave each and every one of you a petition concerning the number of hunters that's coming since some of the other WMAs have been made a draw. We have an influx coming in over there. It is surrounded by private landowners with livestock, and we're having problems with the trespassing as well. But just the number of hunters coming in is our concern. At any given time, it's only 800 acres, and it's surrounded by private landowners, and we're having a big problem with it. And if we could just get it to where it was like a draw, like Happy Hollow, so forth, anything that could help us would be a great help to us.
All right, are you working with your local game warden at this time on the trespassing issue?
Well, we haven't had any for a while. We've got game wardens that come in from other areas, and I brought it up to our manager and Ms. King, but we're trying to rectify that problem. We've had game cameras coming up, stolen at several landowners. We've never had to lock them up, you know, because it's in a very rural area. We've got hunters coming in that's on camera, just looking up at our signs. We've got purple painted everywhere around. We've got signs put up, and they just don't acknowledge them.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other public comments concerning wildlife? Thank you, Joe.
All right. Yes, sir, Commissioner Straub.
The gentleman that just came up, this is your petition here that,
Yes,
and that's some of the landowners around and
about every one of them.
everybody around you.
Everybody on that three road area of MTSU.
And is there anybody that are hunters that are on here too?
Just about every one of us.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much.
Main concerns for our kids and grandkids that hunt around
Yeah.
and the livestock.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to call on our Vice Chairman of the Fisheries Management Committee, Commissioner Connie King.
And I would like to recognize Chief Frank Fiss, Chief of Fisheries.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. I've got a few topics on the carp front that have come up since our last commission meeting that I wanted to share with you. Some good and a little bit ugly, unfortunately. The first thing I wanted to talk about was the news release that you probably saw in late December regarding the $25 million that went to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service FY20 budget. It was signed on December 20th. This represents a great leadership from really our southeastern senators, Alexander, McConnell, Shelby, and we had great support from the U.S. Representatives from Tennessee as well on this. It was a group effort trying to get everyone to understand our needs and inform them of what they were. We had great help in Tennessee from the Tennessee Wildlife Federation. Mike Butler and Lindsey Gardner were essential in getting that messaging across. So this is a big win for those of us that have been working with our congressional offices, and also the legislative aides that we've worked with were great in trying to get our message understood and this package put together. So exactly what this is, it increases the federal funding that goes to the Fish and Wildlife Service from 11 million to 25 million. So it's an effective increase of 14 million. And that's substantial. That's over doubling it. And it is currently, we as Tennessee, we only see about 3% of the funding that we have that they get in total we see in Tennessee. But I think a lot of the legwork that we've done to understand our carp populations and demonstrate our need will help us going forward to get more of these funds. Another separate piece, in addition to the 25 million, is that there was funding approved for state aquatic nuisance species programs. This is funding that we've been getting every year for several years now, and it will up that funding amount to $100,000 a year, which is a nice price point because it will allow us to easily pay one full-time salary for aquatic nuisance species coordination. And we've already hired that person. His name is Cole Hardy, and he's working on a conference call about carp right now. It'll be great to have that funding to take care of that position in the future. And really, I don't have a lot of information from the Fish and Wildlife Service on how they're going to deliver funds to all the states. This money could be spent on the Great Lakes. It could be spent in the lower Miss, upper Miss. So we're having those conversations. That's what most of the work that I've been doing and plan to do in the coming weeks is coordinating with that group to demonstrate the needs that we have in Tennessee. So I don't have any more for you yet, but I'm very optimistic that we will have a good chance at those funds. So some of the other news was that we did have a silver carp reported by an angler on Chickamauga Lake. It was a photograph that he took in October. He was not sure what he had. He kind of held on to the picture, and on a conference call with Jake Davis, who's the Bass Conservation Director that this commission recognized last year, I think, he said, hey, you should share that picture with the agency to make sure what you had or didn't have. And he did, and that's why we got the picture months later on a Friday morning. And now that picture was being emailed about, we wanted to be first and accurate on the report, so we sent that out on that Friday when we got the information. What that fish represents to me is this is was the current distribution of Asian carp in Tennessee. Those pink lines are abundant carp populations with limited reproductive potential, and then those dots as you go up the Tennessee River represent just individual hits of fish, not large populations. Well, this photo verified carp puts silver carp in Chickamauga Lake. I would say, given the fact that we've had no reports from, and I have been talking to Alabama quarterly at least since 2017 about have there been any more fish upstream of Decatur. The fact that they're not seeing reports of anything in Guntersville, and this is our first report, it leads me to think that this fish represents a very, very low number of carp in Chickamauga Lake. And as such, it really doesn't change our current strategies as far as where barriers should be placed. There is still time to protect a Nickajack, Chickamauga, Watts Bar reservoirs from immigration at these low numbers. And that some of that funding that we've just got, that was just afforded to Fish and Wildlife Service, we're hoping to get in that discussion to use those funds to get that work done. So the other news about that carp, we've had our staff out electrofishing, looking in that vicinity. They were out yesterday, actually. They've yet to see a fish, a carp. And there's no indication that there's small silver or bighead carp out there, so there's no need to do any bait restrictions at this time. That would only come into play if we had observed lots of little fish or felt that the potential for little fish occurring like we had in Kentucky Lake and we see on the Mississippi River, it was demonstrated. We've not demonstrated that in East Tennessee, so we may be back asking for that at some point, but that is not to be considered at this time, in my opinion. So that's really all. I just wanted you to know that we have heightened our surveillance. We're working more closely with commercial fishermen in this region, make sure they know what they're looking at when they see a silver bighead carp. Any anglers that would get one, we want a picture, we want the fish, we want to know how old it is, we want to know all kinds of things about these fish. But right now, we know very little except that one picture. So the next issue that's come up since the holidays, early in January, we had a disruption for our Asian carp harvest incentive program. Let me back up to just say what we're doing now, or what we have successfully done over the last 15 months or so. We have a 10 cents per pound total subsidy to the industry. 7 cents of that goes to the commercial fishermen. 3 cents goes to the contractor or the buyer, the person that buys the fish in Tennessee from the commercial fishermen. To date, we've paid out $315,000, which means we've removed about a little over 3 million pounds of fish, and we've provided $42,000 worth of netting materials that commercial fishermen have used to, and they've put money in those nets as well to build them out. We had 17 commercial fishermen and 3 contractors. So it was working pretty well. We started in September, halfway through the month in 2018. We were rolling along around just shy of 150,000 pounds. Then a market for the lobster bait industry became available, and harvest doubled for the next several months. So we were on track using, if you look at the average of those big, taller bars there, we were on an average track to reach about 4 million pounds a year if that could keep going. But what's happened, we had an announcement early in January from the buyers in Kentucky that they were, which is the next stop for a portion of the fish that are purchased in Tennessee, that they were not going to pay what they'd been paying. They were going to drop their price 2 cents. And buyers in Kentucky are not coming to pick up the fish anymore either. They were coming to get them. Now they're saying you've got to bring them. So there's a cost there. So as a result, the profit that the low margin of profit that I'm told that the contractors in the HIHCP program were getting was being cut by 3 cents a pound. And these same contractors are saying that they're not going to be buying carp if that's the position they're put in. The price that they're required to pay to the commercial fishermen is 20 cents a pound, and the commercial fishermen are generally happy. We don't have a problem with those 17 people. It's the 3 contractors that are trying to figure out how to keep these 17 people working. So we are halfway through this fiscal year on the HIHCP program, and our proposed fix is that we just add 3 cents a pound to the contractors or buyers, which would result in a 13 cents per pound total. It's a 30% increase to the cost of the program, but it's only going to be realized in the remaining 5-6 months of this fiscal year. We will be in here, just so you compare it to what we're currently doing. I would like to come back in March and present a budget request to have funding to continue the HIHCP program in FY21. We have no money budgeted at this time for that program. So this fix of 13 cents a pound we have in the budget because we had some off months and we had some nets that we were able to buy ahead of time. But anyway, we have enough money to cover this. We're not asking for a budget expansion. Just wanted to let you know that this was the action we're proposing to take and when we amend the contract for them. That contract will end June 30th, and I'll be in March to get set for the next fiscal year. So this is a patch. It's probably, if there's an economist in the room, it's probably, I don't know if it's the right patch or not, but we want to keep this moving. We're only in the 2nd year, and we want fish to come out of the river. Our goal is to have 4 million pounds at least come out every year. So that's really the end of that side of that piece of the story. That's the 3rd point I wanted to mention. So if there's any questions about any of this, I'd be happy to answer those.
Well, I have a question first. Wasn't there something about the buyers who quit buying small carp also?
The lobster industry that was buying small carp, that group slowed down as well because they were able to get local menhaden stocks on the East Coast. But I think part of that problem as well is that they weren't able to get the supply. I still think that our contractors in Tennessee need the capacity to hold fish, more fish than they are, so they can be ready whenever these dips in the lobster market come on. I think when you heard from Mr. Young about how they needed more space, I think we're seeing a little bit of that problem realized. Now, there's another market for even lower valued small fish that they lowered the price on that a lot as well in Kentucky. I don't think we can chase that market with our incentive because it's such a low value market that we may as well just buy them at that point. I mean, it would be so much more money for us to incentivize that. I would rather get, if we get these funds from the service or anywhere, one of the things we do need to look at is expanding that freezer capacity to get that lobster contract was just great because it took small fish and it took lots of them. But anything we can do to get back into that, I think, is really important. Otherwise, we're looking at letting fish grow out to size to be harvested for a better price, and that's not good for anybody.
Such a crazy balancing act. It's like we're trying to get a market, but we're trying to do away with whatever we're trying to market.
And that's why I think that the investors that I've talked to, even the ones that are in the contract, that have contracts, and even the more other people that call about different ideas, they're real skittish about investing because they don't know what's next if we are successful, which is understandable.
Way I would look at it. Well, and then one more question I had, the fish at Chickamauga, it jumped in the boat
That's what the man said.
and he saw others with it?
Claim that as well. Yeah, I have no reason, I'm sure he did. I mean, we can't say what those other fish were. That's hard to do, but fish in the boat was pretty good. It was pretty rare that people send us a good picture of anything. We were able to tell on that fish. So that was good. And if anyone sees any more, we really do want samples. So.
Anybody else have a question for Chief Fiss? Kurt, do I ask for Bobby? Do I ask? Okay. No one else on the commission have a question? Is there anyone in the public would like to ask a question about this issue? Thank you, Chief Fiss.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner King. Next on the agenda is the boating and law enforcement. And before I call on Chairman McLaren, just take a minute to brag on the agency on what's coming up next. Back in 2016, the commission asked the agency to review or ask them to do a tagging review. The agency did away with tagging in 2013, so we asked them to review them. Many of you weren't on the commission then. But in 2017, they came back and was going to cost about $7 million, if I remember right, Michael, to implement a paper tagging system, which was totally out of our means. Couldn't do it. So we requested them to come back with an alternate solution if they could find one. And Michael's going to present one today. And the amount of cooperation between the different divisions in this agency and this process has been unprecedented, in my opinion. I don't want to name them all off, but the Wildlife Division, I&E, law enforcement, practically everybody other than Frank. Sorry, Frank. But in all seriousness, Director Carter, thank you for allowing them to do it. What you guys have come up with and the cost is, I don't know that our budget chairman will agree with the cost, but if he doesn't, we'll fire him. So anyway, but I'm going to turn it over to Chairman McLaren.
I call on Michael May. Michael, remember, we've only got a couple hours for the rest of the day here, so try to keep it to an hour and a half.
I've got 3 or 4 hours planned for this. We're good to go.
You know, maybe, Frank, we can add in e-tagging the carp, possibly.
Might be able to do that. Thank you, Chairman, Commission, very much. Real quick, so yeah, thank you, and I'll go ahead and see if this works. Look at that, it does. All right, good, I can do it. So just to review just a little bit exactly what was talked about right there so I can keep on going. Back in 2013, we did move away from taggings because we got our new mobile app at the time, and in an attempt to try to give as much customer service back to the customers as possible, we wanted to be able to allow them to, one of the many things, buy licenses on the app, harvest, report their harvest on the app and so forth. And that was the reason why we did that. And then go through what Commissioner Holbert just said. And we found one of the things when we did our tagging review is we saw that we needed an increase for compliance and an increase in harvest data. And that was really what pushed us towards looking at various options for tagging. And $7 million obviously for durable tag is not feasible and so forth. So last year came up with a proposal due to some new technical advances that Brant, our licensing vendor, came up with for our app, which I'll talk about in just a moment. We were able to come up with a concept. So that's what I kind of pitched last year in February to make sure that the commission liked it. We would pursue the technical process to make sure to see if we could do this or not. So talk about the upgrades real quick so everybody understands what we're talking about is Brant, they're a licensed vendor and they do our app, which we got for free. Doing okay with the free part right now? Okay, all right. So they've done a lot of upgrades in about a year and a half. So everything in the app has really been upgraded. It's a lot easier to purchase a license, a lot easier to create a profile. It's a lot easier to do reporting your harvest, right? And the biggest key right here, if you don't remember anything about what I'm talking about, it's usually what I have to tell my wife, is that the biggest thing right here, if you want to remember anything, is we can report a harvest now with a mobile app, and it's about a year ago we could actually start doing this, with or without cell service. Because of that is why we're able to talk about this new hybrid e-tagging solution, potential solution for you. And so what you keep on going. So and we need to look at our customer behavior. So does this work for the majority of our customers or all of them? So we call it a hybrid solution. I'll talk about that in a moment. So 90% of our customers are using either mobile, about 75% of that 90% use mobile to harvest report. About 25% of those, that 90%, will use it when they use their PC when they get home. And we think that that'll increase. 75% will increase and 25% will go down when we start talking about this new solution. About 6% reported a license agent and the 4% report at a regional office. So we're calling it tag before you drag, and that's really what we want to do with any tagging solution. We need to have a tag attached to that animal, big game animal, before we move it. And that's the concept. So in the hybrid system, to try to make sure that we support any and all of our demographics, is we've come up with a mobile solution, which is simple. It's one step. You do it out in the field and it's done. Or you can use a paper tag, and that's going to be 2 steps. You tag it before you move it, and then by midnight, you're going to need to report your harvest in one of the methods that we have. So let's talk about number 1, the mobile app version. So we lovingly call that the e-tagging solution. Tag before you drag with the mobile app. So that's really no change to what we're doing with 90% of our customers right now. It's very easily to comply with law enforcement regulations like that in the field. Like I said, with or without cell service. The key to this is whether you have cell service or not, what happens is the app will come back and give you a harvest confirmation number. And then when you do hit cell service, right, it'll pop up to the database and it's populated and you're good to go. It's invisible to the customer. Very simple. And then basically when you report your harvest in the field, you are tagged and you've reported your harvest all at one time and you can move it. And if you come up to an officer, the proposal would be if you come up to an officer, you show them your phone and you're tagged. That's why we call it an e-tag. So a lot of our people say it takes 2 minutes to do it. Jennifer says it takes 30 seconds for her to do it. I do believe that. But so what I did is I erred on the side of being conservative and I added 50% and I said it takes 3 minutes to do this for the average person. And no paper needed. here's a little bit of it, if you haven't done it yet, a little bit of a visual on how we do the reporting of harvest on the phone, right? Pretty simple. And it'll show your information right there. And then you're finished. With this solution, you are done in the field. You've tagged it, you've reported your harvest, you're done. And you can show that to the officer. The other method, pushing all these buttons, all right, would be to use a paper. Did we already get those pushed out, Jennifer? All right. So in front of you, we have two different ways that you can potentially use paper. If you're not going to use a mobile app, right, you can use a paper to tag. Now, we have two different ways that you can buy a license. 8.5 by 11, if you go to a big box store, you get 8.5 by 11, and we have some samples of what the tags are going to look like on the bottom of that 8.5 by 11. And then the durable stock. That's 8.5 by 11. I'll show it to you in a minute. And then the durable stock paper is that. We do have about, I would say, a little less than 250 locations right now that still have the durable stock printers. When we moved from to Brant originally back in 2016, we had roughly 1,200 locations out in the field that had all the printers, and we moved down to 300. And now that's degraded down to less than 250, and we see that number going down as well. So the durable stock paper will probably go away at some point in time. So the two steps are the last two bullets I have there. Must, one, attach whichever kind of tag that you have, if you got it from a durable stock location, or if you went to a big box store and got your 8.5 by 11, you take that tag, you put it in a Ziploc bag if you want, zip tie it, and coming upon you to put it on the deer or the big game. And then you're good to go to transport it at that point in time. So you've tagged before you drag, and then by midnight, you have to find one of the ways. If you want to go to your car, have your grandchildren do it on the phone, whatever you want to do, by midnight, you have to have it harvested, report your harvest. And that's really all it is. And then if you take a look, let me see, here we go. If you take a look at the tags, we've also included an encrypted QR code on there. You see that little box on the right of those 4 tags? That is, you've probably seen them in all different types of commercial products. And so if you took your phone right now and you used any kind of QR reader and you read that, it would be encrypted. They have a bunch of numbers on it and say TWRA only. So we're able to track the customers with this code. I'll tell you about that in a second. With actually a law enforcement app that Brant gave us for free. They developed it and gave it us for free, so we're still on free. And so the law enforcement officers, their special app can decrypt that code and track the customer. And that is a version right here for the durable stock. And like you said a minute ago, this was all different types of divisions: law enforcement, wildlife, licensing, outreach, communication, legal. Everybody got into this to make sure that what we put together, all different divisions who are applicable to this are happy with it. All right. So that's really the system. Because of the ability to be able to report a harvest with or without cell service really makes this achievable. And I think that we've been able to thread that needle between cost, R3 benefits and so forth. So what we've done, we do believe that this will increase harvest compliance if we use this, increase our harvest data because of that. No change for 90% of the customers. It's easy and intuitive, especially with the R3, with the mobile piece of it. It's R3 friendly, right? Recruiting, retaining, and reactivating our customers. With our big initiative that we're working on with R3, with the mobile e-tagging piece of it, this is really not going to be an R3 barrier at all. It'll still be easy. So there we go. And I think I've got a couple pages here. Now, I don't want to get into all the different pages and screenshots of what the classified LE app, how it works, but I'll show you two. Right here you can see that they have a scan for the barcode, and they also can look at your, where's it at? My scan activity. So the really cool thing, and I can probably have Sonia Northup come up and talk about it at length if you so choose, and Kate as well, about what the officers how they're using this already. But theoretically, they can scan those, as many of those QR codes as they want to. It pops information up there about the individual. And then the next day, they can go and see easily through their scanned activity and find out by punching those buttons on the person's name and see if they went and harvested their animal by midnight that night. It's very simple for them to go back and check. That is basically it. So to summarize, tag before you drag initiative. We have two different methods: e-tagging, one step, very simple, and then paper tags, and we showed you the two different types, right? And then we have our free LE app that easily tracks the customer's compliance. So that's it in a nutshell. Try to keep it simple. Any questions?
Seems like every time we've discussed this, we always talk about the person that kills more than 4 deer. And if they have this, this stock here, can they go to the store and get more of these, or do they then have to have a printer to print the hard copy off, or?
So that's one part sorry about not putting that up there. What we need to do is understand that we have it set up to where people can log into the system and print these out for free. No problem.
So I guess after you finish this durable stock, then you just go to the copy paper?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any more questions from the commission? Ms. Connie?
Recently, I've had 2 people call and fussing really hard at me, one of them being my son-in-law, over the fact that he was trying to do it on e-tag, and he's a landowner, and he clicked that, and then they asked for all this parcel, your place on the map or something. He didn't have a clue. He just bought this farm, and so he couldn't get his, and then not long after that, I had somebody else call. We had to get Google and try to figure out where his plat was and all that. How did they get around that?
We do have that on there as a requirement, and that's per legal. We need to have that on there, but we can definitely look and see if there's an easier way for us to do that, but we do need the information for the landowners.
The website you're looking for is TennesseePropertyViewer.com. Type in your county, your last name, and it'll pull up all the tracts of land that he owns, and he can pick that.
We found it, but it was after the fact. He couldn't then, because I didn't know how to find it for him. It was new property, and then the other.
You just end up identifying yourself as not a private landowner, so you can get rid of the check.
Yeah, and that's how we get around
The
it.
information you're looking for because of that.
Anyone else from the commission? Any questions of the public? Yes, sir.
Clarence Dyes, Lebanon, Tennessee. I probably didn't hear, but y'all all look at me and tell me there ain't no chance I can do one of them first ways they do it. So, but I have for years done mine online on my PC at home, because I just, when I get the deer home, I just go in the house, weigh it and everything, and go in the house and print out my tag. Now, the last comment you made said you can go online and print out your copy of that, but you was talking about earlier for the second method, the physical paper.
Yes,
I don't have any problem with that, but the second method, you said when you buy your license. And I'm an old geezer now, and I have a lifetime license.
Absolutely.
So thank you. That was my only question. Can I do that by going and using my TWRA ID number or something and print it out there?
Yes, sir. Yes, that is very easy. Like, you're already online right now. You can go online, and you'll be able to print out that for free, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions from the public? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. And we don't vote on this today. There's nothing really to vote on. But the agency does need some direction from the commission. So I guess I'm asking the commission, is there anyone Is there any opposition to this? If not, then I'd like to direct the agency to proceed with this and to bring back an amendment to the proclamation in manner and means in February, if that'd be possible. But Commissioner Sanders?
Well, since everybody's already said it, the Budget Committee has no issue with this.
That's a good thing.
I have one concern. Since the folks that are developing these apps, they're providing it for free, correct? Is there a chance at any time they may come back and decide they need to charge us for that? Or
No, that's in the contract.
that's in the contract, that can't not happen?
That is our contract that we have with them. It's a 10-year contract. I think we went in 2016, am I right? And this is part of what we get out of the contract.
I'm sure that's probably a redundant question.
No, it's a good question. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's part of the mastery of the negotiating skills of the individual who worked on that.
Job, Director Carter. Any other questions? All right, is that good enough? Is that good enough direction? I think.
Yes, sir. We'll come back in, if I understand it, we'll come back in February with the proposed amendment to the Manner and Means Proclamation. And I can tell you that the technical abilities and technical requirements for this will be, if this goes through, we will be able to have it up and running for new license year.
Okay, so it would be ready for turkey season this year?
Yes, March 2020.
All right.
Ready to go.
Okay. Any other comment from the public about this? All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. All right, we'll get started. I'm going to call on Commissioner Sanders, the chairman of the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to call John Mack, Region 4 Wildlife Program Coordinator, up to the mic.
Which button? Oh, there you go. Okay, I started saying I thought I might have to push a button. Hopefully I'll be short and sweet. I'm here to ask for a budget expansion for the North Cumberland Off-Highway Vehicle Program of $210,000. That's all into a OHV grant. And basically, it's an 80-20 match where we get 80%, $168,000 will be reimbursed to the agency. It'll cost the agency $42,000. As far as the match will come from, is coming from the sale of the high impact permits.
John, can you tell me, where's the 42 coming from?
That's what I'm saying. The 42 is coming from the sale of the high impact.
Okay, so that's
permit.
coming from the sale of the high impact, okay.
July of this year through mid-November, we sold approximately $162,000 worth of those permits.
Okay.
So we have more than enough for the match. It's not really any of the hunting or fishing license money involved.
Is there questions from the Budget Committee? Questions from the Commission? Questions from the public? If not, I'll take a motion from a committee member for passage. Have a first, we have a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tried to make that painless. Ken, not so lucky for you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I'm reporting through the month of November today. And again, we have as of last month, a new presentation. Shouldn't take perhaps as long as in the past. At the top of the page, the boating fund is approximately $172,000 less than the projection for this point in time through November. November's a relatively low month anyway. The expense to the approved budget is 21% through November. In the middle of the page, the license income is approximately $743,000 behind projection. Don't think I'd be that concerned with it because of the posting, the timing of the postings of revenue. I believe you'll see it come up a little bit or significantly in December. The expense to the budget is approximately 23%. The wetlands acquisition has $17,956,000 balance in it, and on the second page are the reserve balances for the funds that we have invested with the Treasury. The current month for the SPIF rate, that's the non-investment pool, is approximately 1.7%, while the year-to-date earnings on the investment is 1.43. Any questions or comments? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as hard as it is to believe, that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. I'm going to now call on the chairman of our Retention and Recruitment Committee, Commissioner James Stroud.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair recognizes Ben West. Give Mr. Ben.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroud. I was told by Commissioner Holbert that I had from now until 5 o'clock whenever I started. So appreciate all the brevity leading up to this. No.
It's a lie.
Yeah, it is a lie. It is a lie. As I tell people a lot, oftentimes my role when I'm doing a presentation is to take less time than I'm given and to show pretty pictures. So I'm going to try and do that today. I appreciate the opportunity to give a little bit of an update about the shooting and hunter education facility that's currently under construction at Lone Oaks Farm, talk about where we are with that, and talk about some potential enhancements to that facility that we've been asked about. But first, I just want I always try and refocus people about what our mission is at Lone Oaks Farm. Those who don't know, it's part of the University of Tennessee, and it is to give kids experiences like this. This young lady, we were happy and lucky to get a shot of her catching the first fish of her lifetime. And we get to see this a lot at Lone Oaks Farm. What's really cool is that most of the kids that have this experience didn't wake up that morning thinking, I'm going fishing today. She woke up that morning thinking, I've got a school field trip today to go and learn about science. Just so happens that the science program that she went through used Fisheries as a way to teach it. So love the opportunity to give kids these experiences, and we just our goal is to make them bigger and better. A big part of that going forward will be the hunter education and clay target range that the commission and the agency has helped us fund. We started construction last October. And we're now well underway. Current projected completion date is in early July. That may be pushed back a little bit based on weather, but the contractors not only on target, they're ahead of their timeline. Really happy to report something that state projects rarely are able to report, and that is we're under budget on this project, which means we're going to be able to build some things that are over and above the proposal that we gave the agency and the commission back 4 or 5 years ago. So we'll be building more trap and skeet ranges, more sporting clays ranges, bigger building, more facilities than we initially thought we'd be able to. So we got really lucky by having a contractor, a really, really good contractor that came in under budget. So we're excited about that. Just to give you a few, and I know the commission was there last October, just to give you a few pictures of what this facility will look like. That's the hunter education and pro shop where folks, hunters and shooters, will come to check in. Behind it, you'll see, which is more is done now, behind it, you'll see the skeletons of a pavilion. That's what it kind of looks like now, overlooking the trap and skeet and 5-stand sporting clays ranges. Be a great avenue for parents and others to sit and watch while their kids or other folks are shooting. Just an example of one of the trap ranges. We will have 4 fields total. 2 of them will be combo fields. 2 of them will be trap-only fields. One of the things we really wanted to emphasize was developing a really top-notch sporting clays facility. We'll have 20 sporting clays stations, give us the ability to host a lot of shooters and hunters. And this was one area we asked the designers, the architects and designers building this, we really wanted to make these special. We wanted to make them super low maintenance. So what you see there is just the skeleton. It's not done. That's a steel skeleton that'll be clad with wood. And 25 years when the wood needs to be replaced, just replace a couple of bolts and it should be there a long, long time. And so we asked them to do that, and we asked them to do something else that's pretty unusual for sporting clays ranges. We asked them to make them all ADA accessible. So we're really excited about that. All of the ranges there will be completely ADA accessible. Not many ranges around the country have that ability, and we're really excited about that. At the same time, we're building out the physical facility. We're starting to build out our branding and promotion and advertising. If you look at this logo for what we're calling the clays at Lone Oaks Farm, it's different than any logo that we've seen for shooting ranges. Almost all of them have a picture of a gun or a target or a clay target flying. We wanted to do something a little different because while we're building a shooting range, it's really bigger, it's part of a bigger goal, and that is to advance the conservation mission in Tennessee, and shooting and hunter education is a part of that. And so we want our logo to reflect a bigger mission than just coming out and busting clays. And I'll talk about that just a little bit more at the very end. So we do anticipate having that facility finished this summer. As construction has started, we've gotten a lot of interest from people in the region, all over the state, but particularly West Tennessee, asking us about this or this or this. Are we going to have this? Could you do this? And then, but about last fall, got a call from Mike Butler, and he said, hey, I got a question for you. He said, have you guys thought about it? Would you be open to including in this facility an Olympic bunker facility? And I said, well, you know, maybe, but let's talk about it. He said, well, there are some of our supporters and stakeholders in the Memphis area, parents of Olympic bunker shooters, trap shooters, have asked us if we would help them partner on developing a facility in West Tennessee. And he said, I think Lone Oaks, this facility in partnership with the agency would be a great location. So Mike, Commissioner McLaren, and some of those parents of shooters came out to the farm to look at the possibility of putting in an Olympic bunker trap as part of this facility. Those of you who do not know what it is, and Brian can tell you a lot more about it than I can. I've seen the facilities, but I've never shot one. It's basically like American Trap on steroids. It is the game that shooters play in the Olympics. In front of the line of 5 shooters is a bunker with 15 different machines in it, and when you're shooting at a station, there are 3 machines in front of you. It throws clays a lot faster and further, and it's just a much more difficult game. And apparently there is a growing interest among shooters, particularly youth shooters in this sport. We talked about this a little bit 4 or 5 years ago when we first started this project. Even just in the last 4 or 5 years, it seems like there's a real growth in the Memphis area and the West Tennessee area in interest for this kind of shooting. The closest range now that they are able to shoot as in St. Louis. So after we spent a day or an afternoon at the farm with Mike, Commissioner McLaren, and some of these parents of shooters, our answer was, and it always is, if this is something that would be of value to hunters and to shooters in Tennessee, then we're interested in looking at it. So we've spent a good bit of time since then thinking about the details of what this would look like. If you're familiar with the project, and I think most of you are, this is the project that's currently under construction. Trap and skeet fields with a hunter education center close to it, and this sporting clays trail that goes around it. When we were there that day, and for a week or two afterwards, we were looking at the possibility of incorporating this bunker trap facility into the existing trap and skeet fields. And there were some real advantages to that. But as we got looking at it more deeply, there were some disadvantages. It was going to disrupt the project that's currently going on, and that's never an easy thing. It was going to reduce one of the trap fields by 1, so there'd be 1 fewer traditional American trap stations. And there were just some logistical problems. So then we started looking at other options. Back in 4 or 5 years ago, when we developed a conceptual plan for this facility, we always said, you know, if in the future demand dictates, if there's demand for a second sporting clays trail, we've got room for that. And with 2 sporting clays trails like that, we could have southeastern or even national sporting clays shoots. And looking at that potential expansion, with a little help from some consultants, we said, you know, there's a really ideal location there for a bunker facility, if that's something we want to do. It is part of a long-term plan there. We can orient it exactly due north, which is preferred. There's plenty of room there, good access off of the main road, so a lot of advantages there. So that's the plan we're thinking about now. In addition to bunker trap, as I said, as people have found out about this project, we've had people emailing us and calling us, asking about some other things, like, have you thought about lighting the trap and skeet field? So we've had a lot of SCTP and other youth shooting coaches say it'd be great if we could come and shoot a couple of hours in the evening after the sun goes down. It'd really give us more opportunities. People have asked us about making the sporting clays trail a super sporting clays trail, which is simply adding more machines. Traditional sporting clays, there's 2 machines per station. A super sporting course has 3 or 4 machines per station. Gives you more options for setup. It can make courses easier or more difficult with more stations. And then just recently, we've had conversations with some folks interested in a 3D archery facility there as part of that. As I said at the beginning, or as I said a little bit ago, we're interested in any and all things that will better serve hunters and shooters in Tennessee. So we're interested in pursuing any of these. One of the issues that we found out is we don't really have a good, solid cost estimate for these, especially bunker trap. Thanks to Commissioner McLaren and some others, I've talked to a lot of people that have built bunker facilities, trap facilities in the past 2 or 3 years, not just in Tennessee but elsewhere, and the estimates have really, really ranged pretty broadly, anywhere from 100,000 to almost 300,000. Some of it has to do with design of the facility, whether you have a cover over the firing line. Some of it has to do just with the soils and the topography of that site. Areas with certain kind of soils and certain kind of topography have to put a lot of money into water drainage systems. So as I talked to Commissioner McLaren and Commissioner Holbert and Director Carter, thought it really made a lot of sense before we put a formal proposal in front of the commission to get a really solid cost estimate. So what I'm proposing today is that we're going to use a little bit of a little bit of money from our current project that's funded, probably $10,000 or $12,000, to hire an engineering firm to help us generate a really, really good cost estimate for what a bunker facility would cost, if the commission is supportive of that. And then if you are, then we'll come back later in the year after we have a really solid cost estimate to talk about exactly what that might cost. So last, I just want to leave you with this. This is what will be standing there at Lone Oaks Farm by this summer. Hopefully, the commission will come back and have one of your meetings this fall or next year, and we'll have it at this facility. It's going to be a beautiful place for shooters, but as I said, we want to be more than just a shooting range. Shooting ranges are great, but we want to be more than just a shooting range. We want this place to be part of the conservation initiative in Tennessee. Exactly what that looks like, I'm not sure, but let me just give you a couple of things we've talked about. This facility, like a lot of public ranges in Tennessee and across the country, have been funded by Pittman Robertson dollars in partnership with the commission and the agency. But the average hunter and shooter that comes to these facilities has no idea how it was funded and the importance of hunter and shooter dollars to conservation. So we've actually gotten a private gift from an individual to help us do some educational signage here. So when people come there, we want to make sure that they leave knowing that hunters and shooters paid for this facility, and not just for this facility, but they paid for wildlife and fisheries conservation in Tennessee and across the U.S. for decades and decades. So we'll have some signage there about what Pittman Robertson is. A lot of what we will do there will feature the work that TWRA has done and the role that hunters and shooters and anglers have contributed to conservation. Another idea, we've got a partnership with Quail Forever. They're really interested in taking 2 or 3 of our stations, developing on the Sporting Clays Trail, developing some really high quality early successional habitat, simulate upland game bird hunting shots at those areas, and again with some educational signage, highlight the importance of those kind of habitats to a whole suite of wildlife species. So we're really excited about that, not just a shooting range, but a real education facility. We want to be a partner with the agency and the commission for a long time in lots of ways. Just last week, we had a conversation with Amy Spencer in West Tennessee, talked about what would it look like if every kid, maybe in the whole state, maybe just in West Tennessee, when they completed hunter education, got a gift certificate for a free round of sporting clays at this facility to give them more opportunities to experience the sport. I just want to say thank you for your support up to now. Really look forward to the things that are coming down the road and would welcome any feedback or comments about bunker, trap, or any of the other potential enhancements.
Oh, that's great, Ben. That's just some awesome stuff. Okay, questions. Does anybody have any questions for Ben on the committee? How about the commission and the public? We're good? So, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention while Ben was here, we have a lot of great partners across the state, but the University of Tennessee, and especially Lone Oaks, have just been extremely great to work with. And they have a vision outlined that so squarely fits into ours. I don't know that we could do any better. So just want to mention that. Thank Ben and all those people at Lone Oaks who worked so hard on this.
Yeah, it's an amazing place. When are you supposed to be done with the buildings, you say?
Right now, the contracted completion date is July the 3rd.
Unless the weather kills you.
That will change every weather day. Gets it pushed, but the contractor's goal is to be done ahead of schedule. So
You're doing great work, my friend. Thank you so much. Anything else? Anybody? Somebody else had? Oh, Mike. Yes, sir.
figured since our name was invoked, I'm Mike Butler with the Wildlife Federation, I'd give you a little bit of a background piece on the demand and what we see happening here as a result. You'll hear tomorrow from our staff about the ripple effect that SCTP has had across the state and continues to have. And one of those ripples that you'll hear about is USA Shooting, which is the official nonprofit organization for Olympic shooting sports in the United States. The Federation we became a certified shooting training center for USA Shooting several years ago. And some of you may remember Chad Wittenberg that used to work for us. Actually, Jimmy hired him away from us so he could coach Martin Methodist, where he's produced a couple national title, 3 national championship collegiate teams. Part of that deal and staying in our relationship with Chad is that we matured that training center and created a nonprofit called, I know it's a long acronym that Chad came up with, but it's essentially a nonprofit for USA Shooting in the state of Tennessee. And our first objective will be to work with them to get this place made into a certified training center for Olympic shooters right out of the gate. We have a lot of folks that are, and Connie will appreciate this. These folks that are shooting this sport are spending and raising lots of money to do so. I've had multiple parents tell us they're spending $20,000 to $25,000 a year. Now that's a lot of money. People say, well, how do they do that? Well, they do a lot of fundraisers. They do a lot of things to do it. And it'll be an attraction. They're driving to St. Louis right now from Memphis almost every weekend during the season. Brian can tell you those details. So with that, we see this as being a destination. And to Ben's point, one thing that he didn't mention is the hospitality side of the mission of Lone Oaks will make this a unique place in the country to where you can take a team and rent a house and go stay and shoot for a weekend. I don't know of any other ranges that have that opportunity. So we're really excited about the use, the demand. We already have at least a couple teams that are looking at starting in Hardeman County to use this facility that you're seeing right here on the slide as soon as it's completed in July to get started. And I think what I would close with is just to say, for this bunker trap piece, you will see a large number of people out of Memphis come over and use it. Initially, it'll probably be in the 50 shooter range. But I think as it's there, if you build it, they will come kind of approach. We expect to see that expand. So, any questions?
And I believe this would be the 3rd public bunker range in the state. Is that right, Mike?
Well, right now, we actually created, I think, the first one that's at Nashville Gun Club as far as a public. Actually, yeah, I think it may be only the 2nd. Nashville Gun Club bought the bunker that we had and put it there. And where else? Crossville does. That's right. Crossville put in through one of the ranges that y'all have supported. They have a fantastic facility over there. So it'll keep moving Tennessee. We like kind of staying at the cutting edge of these things. It'll keep moving us to that point.
Mike, great. That's great. Brian?
Just so you know that we're not out in the left field here, the Cardinal Center in Marengo, Ohio hosts the SCTP National Shoot. They have just let out in the last week or so that they're building 4 new bunkers. They've got one already, but they're building 4 new ones that'll be ready to go by this summer.
Wow.
Cool.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroud.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Chairman, we're done.
Thank you, Commissioner Stroud. I'll now call on our chairman of our audit committee, Commissioner Ripley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair would recognize Barbara Reagan, our auditor, at this time.
Good afternoon, and I'm not as tall as those guys. Thank you for having me here, Commissioner Ripley. Today I'm just going to go over a brief summary of my job duties, the external audits that TWRA receives, and what we do to detect, prevent, and report fraud, waste, and abuse. So I've been at TWRA for about 3.5 years. Prior to that, I was a state auditor with the Comptroller's Office for 15. So we're going to start today with just a couple of items that are, they're not actually audit related, but I am responsible for them. So the first item is the indirect cost rate proposal. It is the rate that we use to calculate the amount of indirect cost we're able to claim back from the feds. The second one is the enterprise risk management assessment. Most of the time we call that the Financial Integrity Act. It is required by a TCA. And basically all the management from each division has to identify their goals and then make sure they have internal controls in place to make sure they achieve those goals. I assist them with those complicated spreadsheets and help them identify the internal controls they already have in place. And then I compile it and submit it to F&A and the comptroller's office. All right, and the audit-related responsibilities, the first 4 of these are required by the International Professional Practices Framework, and that's a mouthful, so we just call it the Red Book because the book's literally red. And I couldn't say that twice if I had to. So the first one is a risk-based internal audit plan. Basically, it's a compilation of all the potential audits, and they're assigned a level of risk. And with that risk, that ensures that the ones with the greatest risk are included in the audit rotation. The second item is a internal quality assurance and improvement plan. That is a self-assessment that I do on the audit activities, and it's to make sure I'm in conformance with the Red Book and the Code of Ethics. The third one is I have to receive and participate in an external QAIP. Basically, a group of state auditors come in and review, say, TWRA, and then I have to be in a group that will review a different state agency. That's just making sure everyone follows these Red Book standards. And the last thing is I have to have a minimum of 24 hours of CPE, and 20 of that is for my certification, a certified fraud examiner. 20 of those hours have to be related to fraud. All right, and the next thing, this is the big one, is to perform the internal audits. So an internal audit is basically an independent, in-depth review of a function, program, or procedure. It's intended to ensure policies and procedures are followed, contract requirements are met, and assets are present and accounted for. They lead to improved efficiency and a strengthened internal controls. And for this one, when I'm doing the audits, it's a great teaching moment. I have the opportunity to learn more about the agency and what the staff are doing. And in turn, that allows me to attempt to help them, even if it's as simple as fixing a formula on an Excel spreadsheet. Anything I can do to help them make their job easier or paperwork easier. That's my favorite part too, is to help them. The last one is consulting. It's probably the most important part. So the consulting is being there on the front end of a new procedure or contract or process. With me being there on the front end, I'm able to ensure that there's internal controls built into the policies and procedures. And if we can get them there on the front end, it leaves less room on the back end for potential issues. And then for external audits, we do receive the big one from the Department of Inspector General, and it's the Department of Interior. They review our Fish and Wildlife Service and the money we receive from them, and to make sure we're in compliance with the federal regulations. And then the Department of General Services, their compliance department reviews our procurement activities to make sure we're following their CPO requirements. And then the sunset audit, which is performed by the Comptroller's Office, we receive that approximately every 4 years. And they look to make sure TWRA is doing what we were set up to do. The single audit, the Comptroller's Office also does this one And this year's the first year we've received one of those, and it is based on the federal funds we receive, and that is the big grant from the Fish and Wildlife Service. If it reaches the $30 million point, we will receive a audit. So we could get one every 3 years, and at most once every year, depends on if there were any prior audit findings and how much money we receive. All right, prevention, detection, and reporting of fraud, waste, or abuse. The comptroller has a hotline. That hotline is statewide. Anyone can call in to report any type of issues or suspicious activity regarding any state agency or employee. We have a compliments and complaint. It's an email address where anyone, the public or employees, can send in a compliment to our agency or employees, and also file, report any type of complaint or issues with TWRA. And the last three, the ERM, the internal audits and consulting, we just went over, but those are three things we have in place that already are preventative steps to attempt to avoid fraud, waste, or abuse. And here's your favorite part. I'm closing. So this was a pretty accurate summary of what I do to help the agency. I'd like to point out that during my audits, everyone I've worked with has been really great, very helpful, and they all work really hard to do what's right. My primary objective in anything I do is to help. I'm always there to help. I love helping and actually making things better, trying to. So pending any questions, this is the conclusion of my presentation.
Thank you, Barbara. We're a big agency with a lot of moving parts and a lot of employees, and it's to your credit that the audit committee doesn't have reason to meet very often. We appreciate that presentation. Are there any questions from members of the commission?
As probably one of only 2 certified fraud examiners in the room right now, I think
There's
Ms.
2.
Reagan ought to come back more often.
Well, we'll have her back just for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, I think.
Hey,
Thank
Barbara,
Mr. Stroud.
can I ask a question, dumb question?
Yes, sir.
What's the difference between an audit and a forensic audit?
Ooh, that is a good question. Typically, a forensic audit, issues have already been pointed out. There's already a problem. You know, someone knows that this check was written and it was fraudulent, and it's a more detailed, they know there's a problem, and they're looking to find everything else that's, because if there's a problem here, there's more of it. You just got to dig deeper to find the rest of it.
So it's a deeper version of something that's in Carp.
Right, and it's typically, you already know there's an issue. Yeah. Any others?
Any other questions from the commission or from the public? And hearing none, that's our presentation, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Ripley. Any other comments from the commissioners or any other business? Any comment from the public? How about from the director?
I have just a couple, but start out, I just wanted to reiterate something you said earlier about interagency cooperation between divisions. I've been so pleased with how that's gone. I mean, you name the division and everybody's jumped in, and whether it's, you know about the Carp and the CWD, and those other, there are a lot of other things that go on as well. And anyway, I just wanted to say, boy, you nailed that one. It's as good as I've ever seen. So I appreciate that. The other, I want to go back to Ben's presentation just for a minute, just to highlight a couple of things. With the addition of what's going on at Lone Oaks, that makes Greenville, Morristown, Knoxville, Crossville, Nashville, Buffalo Ridge, and Lone Oaks, now that the commission has funded shooting ranges. And I don't know if there are many states that can equal that. Not on, and that doesn't count all the small ranges that are going on WMAs and all the others. I'm talking about really nice first-class facilities that shooters and hunters can utilize. The other thing I want to mention is that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service finally has a director. After more than 3 years, the acting principal deputy director is still there, but Aurelia Skipwith has been appointed and confirmed by the Senate that she is now the director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Had a chance to sit in her office probably about a year ago. That happens every time I speak. And the very last thing I want to mention, that could either be amber or weather.
And one or the other.
The last thing I want to mention, y'all have met Andy Furlong when he was the guy that headed up our essentially our accounting department from finance administration. Andy left in December to go take another job. I want to introduce to you Dennis Sosterman. Dennis has taken Andy's place and will be supervising that group, and you'll see him at many of the commission meetings. But other than that, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Carter. One part of the agency I a lot of times gets failed to mention, but there's one division that really everything that happens has to go through. And she sits right here on the front and is really quiet. But Tracy and Thomas in our legal division, and I know there's more than just you in there, but so right there is a big part of it. She does most of it. So anyway, but you guys don't get mentioned much, and I want to call you out today. So because pretty much everything that happens, some form or fashion goes through you guys. So well, yeah, we hope. If not, we usually hear from her quickly. I've already asked. No, I'm kidding.
I'm not starting a new Valentine tradition. You see the little heart-shaped boxes. That's in lieu of my Christmas. I wasn't here Christmas, so that's either a late Christmas or it's an early Valentine. But anyway.
From both of us.
From James and I, because we missed the meeting.
We understand.
He picked up the pecans and I toasted them.
All right.
I just wanted to mention, and she's so modest, but it's Connie's birthday today, so.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
One last comment. I do want to remind the public who are listening that from January 15th to February 15th is the time that you can send in comments to the agency for hunting, your recommendations, your comments. But anyway, that email address is twra.huntingcomments@tn.gov. So anyway, just want to remind everybody of that. All right, we're adjourned.